Melanie Simolo, and I am the director for the Academy for Teaching Excellence here at New York Chiropractic College. And we have been using, at the college, we've been using ExamSoft since the summer of 2013. And we've had a lot of great experiences with the tool since that point. But today what I want to share with you is my experience with the collaboration group that I created, which consisted of other similar institutions, other chiropractic institutions who were using ExamSoft. And this group really became a base of support and inspiration for ideas and an outlet for shared implementation challenges. And I'm hoping that through this webinar, you get inspired to maybe create a similar group in order to have some of those same benefits. So this is just a really brief agenda of some of the things I'm going to cover today. I'll talk first a little bit about the purpose of a collaboration group, both why we decided to start one and as well as what you might want to do with a similar group. We'll also talk about the specific logistics of the group up, as well as some specific conversations that we had, things that we uncovered, things that we talked about and helped each other with. And then we'll talk a little bit about some future directions that I'd like to take the group that we have in place, as well as future directions that you might be interested in taking in order to set up your own collaboration group. So you may be asking yourself, and I apologize, on my screen it looks like it's flashing. It's not supposed to be. So if it looks like it's flashing for you, I'm not sure what the technology is doing, but I do apologize for that. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, why should I think about creating a collaboration group with other institutions like mine? Essentially, why do I want to maybe help my competitors take on this really powerful tool that might actually end up giving me an edge? But my question to you is really, why not? As anyone who has implemented a new tool, a new technique, a new technology, a new process, into a team-based environment, which essentially is what we're in higher education, as anyone who's done that knows, having a support system, especially one that's gone through or is going through a similar situation, can be really helpful logistically, can provide inspiration, motivation, and support. So really, why learn as you go or kind of fumble through on your own when you can create a network of like-minded peers to brainstorm, troubleshoot, and provide insight based on these shared experiences that you're having. And that was really what I was looking for when starting this collaboration group. So we're going to spend our time today really talking about the purpose, what we did, how it helped us and others, and how you can create a similar group with your peer institutions. So many chiropractic colleges purchased or considered purchasing ExamSoft right around the same time. And each of us had our own implementation plan, our own unique challenges to deal with regarding implementation, but we also had shared unique needs based on the specifics of the chiropractic program, the classroom, and the clinical programming. So on the one hand, yes, we're all competing for students. So you might think that helping each other succeed in the implementation of this powerful program might be counterintuitive, but really the bigger picture is more important, and we all understood that. We all have the same goal, and that's to educate future chiropractors who are going to have a positive impact on the profession. And the better we all are at doing our job, the greater impact we're going to have on our students and on the profession as a whole. So it's really in our best interest to work together in order to improve the education and assessment of all of our students across all of our institutions. Also, opportunities for research across institutions is greatly increased if we're all using the same technology and have the same or similar processes in place. We developed our category tagging structure, for instance, based on our national board and our meta-competencies from our overriding chiropractic accrediting body. And by sharing these between institutions, we really ensure that we will all have data that can be compared and researched. And as a bonus, that data is all going to look the same because it's all being generated through the ExamSoft system. Now, over the year or so that this collaboration group was active, we really all spent time on both ends of the learning curve. There were some conference calls where maybe I answered a question for another institution, and other conference calls where the other institution answered a question that I had. There are some times that we maybe inspired another institution based on something that we tried or did, and other times they inspired us. But perhaps best of all, if we were all struggling with something that was frustrating or difficult to resolve, we at least knew that we were all in the same boat, and we could provide this mutual support, even if not immediate answers. Now, when an institution tried something new or used the program in a certain way for the first time, we were all able to use this conference call to celebrate and congratulate each other on those successes. So in a sense, we were a little bit of group therapy. We were there for each other through the struggles and through the implementation process, but we were also there for each other through the successes and could really celebrate each other in that way. And seeing someone else succeed, particularly when they're succeeding in a direction that you want to go in, gives your purpose and your direction some added credibility. And that's maybe where some of the competitive nature of the institutions might come into play in a positive way. You know, if we can move forward and say, well, such and such institution did it this way and it really worked for them, and we think that we need to start moving in that direction as well, it's a wonderful motivator internally from the administrative level all the way down to the faculty level and the student level as well. So let's talk a little bit for a second about the actual group that we had in place. At its largest, we had about 7 or 8 colleges participating. Now, some of them had already implemented ExamSoft. Some had contracts in place and were kind of towards implementation, and some of them were just ExamSoft curious. They just wanted to know more about it. And we didn't really restrict the group only to people who had already had ExamSoft in place. We met on average monthly for about a year, and I found that about a year in, the participation and the interest level was kind of dwindling a little bit. And I don't think it was so much because we didn't all learn from and benefit from the group, but I think we were all at a point where we had become more self-sufficient and were more focused on our day-to-day of the individual implementation plans. So basically, we moved out of the growing pains. We got all of those out of the way, and we didn't need to rely on each other so much for implementation and logistics, which was initially kind of the purpose of the group. So what I want to do at this point in the collaboration group process is really identify what the group actually needs at this point and adjust the focus of the collaboration group accordingly. And I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit more when we get to the future direction section of the presentation. So logistically, we set up this collaboration group using our campus conferencing system, much like what we're doing now. We had the option of using webcams, which was kind of nice because for many of us, we maybe see each other once a year at the annual conference, and that's it. So being able to see our faces more often was a nice connection for us. Or we could do it audio only depending on our needs and our abilities and our technologies. And we could also share our screen with the group or allow someone else to share theirs. So that was nice. We could actually show a process or some information that as we were talking about it. So if we were trying to talk someone through, this is how you actually do this, or this is how we actually do this, we could share our screen and actually show that as we went through it. We personally used GoToMeeting, but I'm sure all other types of conference call technologies offered similar possibilities when it comes to the different abilities that they provide. So this collaboration group was in place at least partially to lessen the learning curve for all of our institutions, and that's kind of one of the purposes for doing this. But the process of actually setting up the group had its own learning curve for me. And in the spirit of, again, not reinventing the wheel and learning from the experience of others and sharing, I want to share some of the lessons that I learned through my experience just setting up the collaboration group and running it. So if there were multiple individuals from each college present on the conference call, the conversation was quite a bit harder to manage, and I felt like personally that I couldn't make sure that everyone had their chance to be heard and had their answered. So consequently, I ended up restricting the group and requesting that only 1 or 2 representatives from each institution be present during the conference call. And those representatives could then go back to their team and relay the information that we talked about to people, the relevant people in their institution. And that just made it a lot cleaner and a lot easier for me to manage. Now, although we sometimes just went around the room, so to speak, and asked each institution to take a moment to share their questions or their experiences or their thoughts or what they've been doing lately, I found it was actually much more effective and led to a deeper conversation if I solicited questions or comments or topics ahead of time. So after I scheduled the call, I would send out an email asking for topics or questions and use what I got back to set the agenda for the meeting. The nice thing about that is if multiple multiple institutions had the same or similar questions, I could make sure that that question got a higher priority when it came to the conference call, and we worked on that one first. We gave it a little bit more time than some of the other questions. So although it took a little bit more work on the front end, it resulted in a more organized conversation and ensured that everyone's questions were addressed and everyone's voices were heard. A huge plus and a great benefit to us were the days when our ExamSoft rep could make it on the call. And at one point, I believe most of us had the same customer service rep at the same time. So our rep was well aware of our program. She was well aware of our implementation strategy. She was well aware of our unique needs. And with the rep on the line, we could have our questions answered that maybe would have taken us a while to fumble through finding the answer for, or maybe we might not have known, none of us might have known the answer to it. And we also could bring up suggestions for improvement to the ExamSoft program that the rep could then bring up to the rest of her team. And since the needs of our chiropractic programs might differ from the needs of, say, programs in other colleges, we were able to make sure that as a group, if we all had the same needs, we gave our rep kind of a stronger ground, I feel like, to stand on when bringing up some potential change that could help us. For example, if we had an assessment that was organized in a certain way and we kind of had to wiggle it a little bit to fit it into the way ExamSoft worked, we could talk to our rep about that and say, look, all of us do this. So as a group, it would be really beneficial, and that's more powerful than just one institution saying, I need this. Prior to the call, it was also really beneficial to set up a Dropbox folder or any other sort of file sharing site. We use Dropbox specifically, and giving everyone access to it so that they could add to it and edit and do whatever they needed to within that folder. So if we discussed, for example, the iPad policies that we developed for our students, we could just throw those into the Dropbox and share that policy with the other institutions, and then they could then take it and adapt it for their own unique situation. But we weren't all reinventing the wheel, and we found that it was pretty even as far as the amount of sharing from each institution was concerned as they were moving into the program and getting more and more experience with ExamSoft. They shared more and took less versus the other way around. So I actually would like to take a few minutes to talk about some of the specific conversations that we had during the conference calls and some of the things that we learned from each other. We were able to discuss strategies and ideas and resources on many levels, and these next few slides will kind of give you a feel for what types of things come out when you create this kind of a group. So when it came to the general use of ExamSoft system, we often could help each other out. For example, we shared in the Dropbox folder some how-to resources or PowerPoints or other institutional specific support documentation that we created and could be used and adapted by others. We actually, in our Dropbox folder, have multiple subfolders that are named Training Docs from XYZ Institution, and it houses the materials that they thought would be useful for others. For an example, we adapted existing ExamSoft documentation to just use what was relevant for us. So in the beginning, we used Scantron only. So we got rid of all the computer-based stuff and just had the relevant Scantron things. And then we added tidbits and tips that were unique to us, such as, hey, put in a crazy alphanumeric password and then set the download start and end times to only 1 minute apart when you post the exam. And then that way, your students are less likely to, one, download it, and two, be able to guess the password since they don't need it for computer-based testing anyway. So sharing those sorts of things where it's, yes, the resources are available through ExamSoft, but we're using it in a unique way that maybe the other institution is also doing, and we can share those resources together. We also discussed our rollout strategies in great detail. We all really rolled this out differently. Some institutions went straight to iPads right away. Some, like us, used Scantrons for a while. Some rolled it out with a few classes at a time based on what faculty members were interested, and some said all new students are on board as of this date. Some started in the clinic setting and some started in the classroom setting. So we really just all jumped in different levels. And we all had learning experiences to share based on where we started that benefited others. One of these benefits of the group was to provide insight into an institution that was maybe new to the system and was really gung-ho and excited, but might be taking on a little bit more than they could possibly chew. So we all as a group could provide insight into whether their planned implementation strategy might be effective or should be tweaked a little in order to have the greatest impact based on the experiences that we'd had and what we'd already gone through. And the institutions who bought into the system of ExamSoft a little bit later, they actually had a lot of expertise to pull from. And those of us that started in different places, we also had a lot of expertise to pull from because we could give advice to others when they made it to that point. So the people who started in the clinic, when we reached clinic implementation, we could rely on their expertise. And those people could rely on us when they wanted to go back into the classroom and start their implementation in the classroom area. So rolling out a new technology to faculty and students really results often in a need for some new campus policies. For example, iPad policy, computer-based testing policy, syllabus statements, like the actual verbiage your institution recommends to add to the syllabi for courses that use ExamSoft exams, and then the other policies that your campus creates. In our case, for example, we created a code of conduct for students where they would, when they were taking their iPad-based test, which we actually borrowed and adapted from another institution, which was not a chiropractic institution, but we shared that with our collaboration group. So what we do is our students sign those code of conduct forms at each exam and they didn't cheat or otherwise copy or disseminate the test information. And it's kind of a longly worded document, so why go through and try to figure out what that verbiage could be when we could just share that with each other? As I've stated before, part of the rollout plan for many of the institutions was in the use of iPads. We discussed in depth the logistics of moving to iPad-based testing from the level of, should students be required to have a Bluetooth keyboard to should our institution purchase charging stations to put in the lounges and what ones are good, what ones are bad, all the way to, should we purchase a bank of loaner iPads for the library in case a student drops their iPad on the way to class. And who pays for it? Does the student buy the iPad or does the institution purchase the iPads and give them to the student? We even went in this way beyond the use of ExamSoft in our conversations, and we shared in our Dropbox folder lists of potentially useful iPad apps that could benefit certain chiropractic-based classrooms that were really specific to what our students were learning. We were able to really move forward into using this space to talk about effective teaching outside of using ExamSoft. We also all answer to the same accreditors with the same meta competencies. Our students take the same national board exams with the exception of our international students, of course. So creating category tagging structures that are reflective of that was very useful for everyone across all involved institutions. Although at the time the bulk importing capability of categories was not possible, at least having that list to go off of when creating categories helped kind of reassure us that we were hitting the important ones, that we didn't miss anything, that everything was included in our tagging structure, and that our tagging structures were set up in a similar fashion so we could potentially share data in the future. And once tagged, we could really start to compare how our students were performing on our ExamSoft data to their actual board exams when they took them. And I remember the first time we could report on this from our school when our fabulous data guru was able to find a really high correlation between how a student performed on a board-related tag in ExamSoft and how they performed on that actual board exam score. And knowing that those things, having the proof that those things were strongly correlated, really gave us a great motivator for ourselves, our faculty, our students, and our partner institutions in the collaboration group to really make sure your tags are done, your tags are accurate, and that you're using ExamSoft data to pinpoint your students' strengths and weaknesses. And it was a really powerful stuff that we could share. Other topics of conversation that came up during our conference call, institutional-wide, we talked about the broad issue of integrating ExamSoft with our existing systems, such as our student portals or our learning management systems. And our collaboration partners were able to report on what systems they used and whether or not they were able to integrate the two technologies together so data could be shared across them. And we were able to really use these conversations to pinpoint, again, where we had the same or different technologies and kind of discuss with ExamSoft any needs we had as far as integration with our other systems. So if a bunch of us all used the same learning management system, for example, and we were having a little bit of a struggle getting the two to talk, we had, again, stronger ground to stand on when it came to talking with ExamSoft about getting that integration in place. Which actually brings up a really good point and a benefit to the collaboration calls. When we found out that all or many of us had a similar question or a similar need or a similar desire in what we wanted to see, we would organize it so that one of us would post that question idea to the ExamSoft community. And then once we posted it, send an email out to the group with a link to the site so that everyone in the group could get on and like or me too the post. As you may know, if you've been in the ExamSoft community, the more often a posting is commented on or liked or me too'd, the greater amount of attention it's going to get from the ExamSoft developers. So our group had this really great opportunity to influence the usability of the system for us through our organized group ideas and suggestions. So part of the unique use of the system was in the chiropractic curriculum at the technique and the clinical level. Practical assessments are often used at those levels of the curriculum, so we needed to really rely heavily on the rubrics feature of ExamSoft. Sharing ideas regarding the setup of rubrics, the usability of rubrics, and the grading of rubrics was really highly beneficial. At the time of these conference calls, the rubrics were actually in the early stages of development and deployment, and we were early adopters and kind of the guinea pigs and test subjects using rubrics before they were broadly released to everyone else using ExamSoft. So we were able to, as a group, really influence how this feature worked. And we even had one of the rubric developers on the line at one point to listen to our needs and our ideas and our use of the rubrics and what we would like to see collectively as a group that would be the most useful from the perspective of those practical-based assessments. So I want to switch gears a little bit now and talk a bit about the future. I have some ideas for my collaboration group and some future ideas for directions that we can take, as well as some suggested easy implementation steps that you could take if you're interested in creating your own collaboration group. I'm going to cover these over the next couple of slides. So future directions, where are we going to go? Where is my collaboration group going to go after this? As I said, we kind of started to peter off after a year because our needs, I feel, changed. And the group as it wasn't really meeting those needs anymore. So there are some possible avenues to reinvigorate the group. Now keep in mind, these are ideas out of my head, and I hope to reinvigorate the group with a different focus, but my future task is really to reach out to my collaborators to identify what their needs are and how this group can be organized for the greatest benefit. So out of my brain, my thinking, how great would it be if we can improve the quality and effectiveness of exam questions across all of our institutions, especially those questions that are organized in such a way that replicate the board exams, or questions that incorporate something that's a little bit more difficult to write, like a case study. Writing a really good exam question isn't easy. It's not something that just happens magically. It's not something that you can just do. It takes practice and it takes study. So I envision some intercollegial departmental groups that can really work together on creating effective assessments. For example, if anatomy teachers from all of our institutions meet to talk about what they do, how they write their assessments, what those look like, and really how they can be more effective or more related to the boards in a different way. I think that would be a beneficial mode for this group to go into. Also, again, excluding our international students, all of our students take the same board exams regardless of what institution you're in. So outside of the actual assessment of our curricular courses, ExamSoft could possibly be used as a warehouse for practice questions for students getting ready to take the board exam. Sharing practice questions across institution would be a benefit to all students involved. And additionally, using the data we receive, but based on the board topic tags in our category structure, could really help to identify maybe some changes or some needs or something that we could as a group bring forward as a united front to our overarching accrediting bodies, to the national boards, and kind of talk about what are some things that we're seeing based on data that's a need that potentially maybe has to change, and we could really influence change in that way. Now, currently, with most institutions in our group moving along at a good pace on their implementation strategies, we're all beginning to really get some great usable data. And this collaboration group could easily become a research group where we share data and develop research based on our ExamSoft data. Perhaps needing to discuss research ideas and possibilities and begin to kind of brainstorm to develop research proposals is going to be in the very near future, and that's something that I think we definitely could all benefit from. And as I said before, all of our data is going to look the same. It's all coming from the same place. So how easy would it be for us to start to aggregate that data and really look at what's happening and how are our students benefiting from that? So what future directions can you take in order to create a collaboration group among your peer institutions? You all may already know what other similar institutions there are out there that use ExamSoft, but if you don't, your ExamSoft rep might be able to help you point you in the right direction. Use your rep, use your overarching accreditors or other national or regional bodies to identify first who your peers are and then whether or not they use ExamSoft. And reach out to those that don't use ExamSoft even to identify if they have any interest in the system. They might want to come in and hear about what everyone is doing and hear about what this has to offer so that they can be involved as well, and you can reach out and collaborate in those ways in potential future research as well. And it's as simple, really, as setting up a conference call. I found that actually the hardest part of this was timing. With institutions stationed from California to New York, we had to contend with time differences and find a time that worked for everyone within their busy schedule. But really, if timing was the biggest challenge of doing something like this, I really can't complain too much about that. But make sure when you do set up the call that you have some sort of a shared space for resources as well. That's it's one of the biggest things, because yes, it's one thing to get on and talk about it and share these ideas, but then being able to put those resources out there and share those resources and learn from each other in that way is even more beneficial, and the conversation can just continue through that sharing site. Now, just because if you want to start a collaboration group and you want to get it spearheaded and organized, just because you organize it doesn't mean that you yourself have to spearhead all the meetings or notes or logistics. Within our group, I did organize all the logistics, and it was easy enough for me to do so at the place that I was at that time. But a potential alternative is to share the responsibility among your collaborators so that each month a different college hosts the call and organizes it. And this would really mean that the knowledge about how it's organized, who is involved, contact information, all of that doesn't exist only with one person. And the shared Dropbox folder might be a great avenue for that information. I kind of envision a meeting logistics folder with an outline of who hosts when, everybody's contact information that's updated as new members join the group, a folder for meeting notes, and any other pertinent information that can really make scheduling easier. But I know that thinking about doing something like this might just be a little intimidating as far as the time commitment is involved. I don't have time to write up the minutes, and I don't have time to organize and make sure everybody's schedules are the same. So sharing that responsibility could make it a lot easier to swallow. Now, these are just some suggestions based on my experience. That's what I kind of wanted to do today, was tell you what I did, tell you a little bit about it, and why it was a benefit, why we were so happy to have this collaboration group, and it was so helpful to us. But these groups can really be organized in any way that's going to work best for you, and you can take it to whatever level that benefits the institutions involved based on their needs. What I've shared here is my experience and some suggestions based on that experience. But I'm putting it out there for you to use as a guideline and not necessarily as the rule of what must be done. So at this point, I hope that you found the information that I shared here useful and maybe inspiring for you to create your own collaboration group of ExamSoft users or the ExamSoft curious. If you have any questions, I'd be really happy to answer them now, or you can email me. I'm sharing my email address there. Feel free to email me at that address as well. So I believe at this point I am going to send the meeting back over to Stephanie for Q&A and closing remarks.
Thanks so much, Amy. What a wonderful presentation. We're going to go ahead and open the forum up for a question and answer session. So if you do have questions for Amy, now is the time to pose them in the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type those in, and we'll go ahead and read those out and give Amy an opportunity to answer or respond. We already do have a couple waiting for us, Amy, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in if that's okay with you.
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, perfect. First question is, do you feel this strategy could be applied to different types of programs within the same institution, or does it only work with the same type of program?
That's an excellent question. We actually did see, we have, in addition to the chiropractic program, we also have acupuncture, we have nutrition, we have a bunch of other programs involved. The acupuncture program is just now getting into ExamSoft. But some of our other institutions also had, for example, an acupuncture program that they were using. And there were discussions as far as that's concerned, because on many levels, the implementation institution-wide is going to be one type of institution-wide implementation. You're not going to do particularly, a lot of differences between the two. Your overarching policies and those sorts of things are going to be the same. So I feel like it could benefit to have all of those together. But if you have something that's really, really focused and specific and has really different needs from another program, then you might want to think about, can you find other programs that really meet the same needs and are organized in the same way? So I think my question or my answer to that would be it depends. It depends on how much similarity and how much kind of cross-pollination you're going to have between those two programs in the implementation, and whether or not that other program is going to be able to benefit based on how they're organized and logistically how they're set up.
Okay, great. Next question is, was there any pushback from administration or even other faculty regarding sharing program performance information?
You know what, we were really careful as far as that's concerned for what specifically we shared. And one of the people on the call every month from my end was our dean of the chiropractic program. And so it was always kind of vetted through that level to make sure that what we're sharing was something that was appropriate and okay to share. So we really did be careful about that. And sometimes we went through and we kind of had to share something that maybe had some blanks in it or some things blanked out just for our own needs and what we did and were not comfortable sharing. So yeah, you have to make sure that what you share is appropriate and that what you share is okay as far as that level is concerned. But when it came to just mostly the training documentation, that wasn't anything that's going to maybe, give us a huge edge over the other institutions or anything like that. It wasn't anything that we would be in danger of if we shared.
Great, thank you. Next question is, do you have any tips for ExamSoft implementation in general? We're a new school user and would love to find a network like this.
Yeah, I mean, reach out, probably starting with your ExamSoft rep, or if you know any other institutions that are similar to yours that use ExamSoft, reach out to them and just see if they're interested in getting on the phone and talking. I've had outside of the collaboration group, I've had other institutions call me and just say, hey, we know that you're doing this. We know that you've been involved in the implementation process from the beginning. We're getting started with it. Can I have, 20 minutes, half an hour of your time and just talk on the phone, and I've been more than willing to do that, or emailing, you know, questions back and forth. So just taking a moment to figure out who might be out there, and using your rep as a starting point might be a good place, because they might be able to say, okay, other institutions that are maybe in your area or that have similar programming, they can pull up the ones that do use ExamSoft already and give you a lead in that way.
Great, and I'll just piggyback on top of that really quickly. The ExamSoft community is a really great place to look for either answers about implementation or tips for onboarding, as well as if you're looking to find a group of ExamSoft users that you would like to set something like this phone call up with. That's a great place to find those peers as well. And if you need to help finding the ExamSoft community, either your account rep would be more than happy to send you the link, or it's also on our website as well. Next question was, can you give an example of something that was actually changed or affected based off of this phone call?
Yeah, so one of the things, I mean, just documentation-wise, our code of conduct forms for our students was something that everyone ended up, I think almost everyone ended up adopting that. So it was something that I think that hadn't even come up as a possibility. We weren't sure how to handle the idea of faculty are uncomfortable with people just showing their computer screen and leaving the room, and they're not handing in a Scantron, they're handing in a piece of paper anymore. And that was kind of a little disconcerting, I think, for some people at first. Not only to mention the fact, like, I don't have physical evidence that that person was in the room besides, you know, me laying eyes on them or taking attendance or whatnot. So having that policy put in place and that kind of process of a student signing an actual, hey, I didn't cheat, I was here, I took the exam, and then handing that in was something that I believe, as I said, I believe everyone implemented that that uses the iPad or computer-based exams at least. So there's one example. There are many things that we ended up changing. The way that we did some of our rubrics, we got ideas and we got inspiration for how to change those, how to actually implement that, how to use those in the clinical setting. So there were a lot of different things that inspired us and helped us to move forward a little bit faster in making these changes, rather than just doing it maybe a wrong way, or not necessarily a wrong way, or a way that's not quite as effective. We were able to kind of brainstorm and share ideas and share experiences so that we could more quickly get to the process that really works effectively.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Amy. That is all we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for your time this afternoon. Thank you, Amy, for an amazing presentation. This is really helpful, and I think a lot of our clients, as well as prospective clients who are coming on board and just starting to figure things out, will really find helpful and useful. Just as a reminder, everybody, when you close out of the GoToWebinar control panel, you will get a pop-up with a quick survey. Again, we would really appreciate everybody taking just a couple of seconds to fill that out. Also, this webinar has been recorded, and you should get an email in the next 48 hours or so that will have a link to the recording, as well as a link to the copy of the PDF version of this presentation deck. Amy's email address is on the screen right now, so if you have questions for her, that's where you reach out to her. If you have questions for ExamSoft, you can shoot those to info@examsoft.com. Again, thank you so much for everybody's time. We know that you're very busy people, so we appreciate you joining us today. Upcoming webinars are listed at resources.examsoft.com. Thank you so much to everybody.